God says, this message is not random. Before you dismiss that as just another line on your screen, pause and understand something deeper. Out of the millions of videos, posts, and distractions competing for your attention at this very second, this is what stopped your scroll. Not by accident, not by algorithm, not by coincidence. Heaven interrupted your movement. The Spirit of God guided your eyes here for a reason that is far more serious than you realize. You were not wandering when you found this. You were being led. And the urgency in this moment is not manufactured. It is spiritual. There's a timing attached to this word. There is a window attached to this instruction. And there is a miracle attached to your response. Your pending miracle has been approved. That means something has already shifted in the unseen realm. The decision has already been made in your favor. The answer you have been praying for, crying over, waiting on, and even doubting at times, has already received the yes from heaven. But here is the part that should make you sit upright. Approval is not the same as possession. Just because something is approved does not mean it hath been claimed. And the Lord is saying clearly that what is pending is waiting on your alignment, your recognition, and your response. This is why the message came with urgency. This is why it carries a deadline. Open this immediately before tonight, 11:59 p.m. That time is not symbolic. It represents the edge of a day, the closing of a cycle, the final moment before something shifts permanently. There are spiritual seasons that end quietly. Doors close softly. Opportunities transfer silently. And many people never even realize what they lost because they were distracted when heaven called their name. God is not threatening you. He is warning you. There is a difference. A threat is rooted in fear. A warning is rooted in love. And love does not stay silent when something valuable is on the line. If you scroll past this moment carelessly, you may not recognize what just slipped through your hands. Because sometimes the greatest losses are not loud. They are subtle. They happen when we assume we have more time than we actually do. You have been in a waiting season. You have been asking, when will it happen? When will the breakthrough come? When will the answer finally arrive? And now heaven is saying, it has already been approved. But approval requires participation. God moves, but He also invites. He releases, but He also requires response. The miracle assigned to you carries your name, but it also carries a condition: attention, awareness, agreement. The enemy knows this too. That is why distraction has been unusually strong lately. That is why your focus has been under attack. Because if the adversary can get you to scroll, to ignore, to delay, he does not have to fight your miracle. He only has to distract you from it. And here's the shocking revelation. There are blessings that can be reassigned. There are opportunities that can pass to someone who is ready, willing, and alert. Not because God is cruel, but because God works with those who respond. If one person refuses the invitation, another will say yes. If one person sleeps through the announcement, another will wake up and step forward. This is not about favoritism. It is about readiness. And heaven is asking a simple but urgent question right now. Are you ready? The timestamp matters because tonight represents a turning point. Before 11:59 p.m., you stand at the edge of a decision. After it, the page turns. Spiritually, there are moments when the clock is more than numbers. It becomes a marker, a line drawn between what was pending and what is released, or redirected. You may feel something stirring as you listen to this. A weight, a pull, a sense that this is speaking directly into your situation. That is not imagination. That is confirmation. God is not vague when He is specific, and this message is specific. Think about the prayers you whispered when no one else was around. Think about the nights you felt forgotten. Think about the moments you almost gave up but still held on by a thread. God saw all of it. Every tear, every sigh, every silent plea, and He is not indifferent. The approval of your miracle is evidence that heaven heard you. But this moment, right here, is about recognition. Will you recognize divine timing when it appears in front of you? Will you treat this as ordinary content, or will you discern it as a divine interruption? This is not random. It is not accidental. It is not casual. Something has shifted. Something has been stamped. Something has been released in the spirit. And the only question left is whether you will respond before the window closes. Because sometimes destiny does not shout. Sometimes it whispers urgently through a screen, through a message, through a moment just like this. And when it does, those who recognize it step into what was already prepared for them. You did not land here by chance. You were summoned. And what happens next depends on what you choose to do with this interruption from heaven. There are moments in life when you feel like something is close, so close you can almost touch it, but it never fully arrives. You sense movement in the spirit. You feel anticipation rising, yet the physical evidence seems delayed. God says your pending miracle had been held in reserve. It has not been denied. It has not been canceled. It has not been forgotten. It has been reserved. That means it carries your name. It has been prepared with you in mind. It is not floating aimlessly in the heavens. It is positioned, waiting for the right alignment of faith, obedience, and timing. When heaven approves something, it is settled in the unseen realm first. Long before you see doors open, conversations shift, or circumstances rearrange themselves, there is a divine decision that takes place beyond human visibility. And once that approval is stamped, no force can undo it. But there is still a process between approval and manifestation. Think of it as spiritual preparation. God often waits until your character can carry what your prayer requested. Because a blessing received too early can become a burden instead of a breakthrough. You have been in what feels like a silent season. Maybe you questioned whether your prayers were reaching beyond the ceiling. Maybe you wondered if the delay meant rejection. But the delay was not denial, it was development. There were lessons forming inside you. Patience was stretching your capacity. Trust was deepening your roots. And while you were growing, heaven was finalizing details. Every tear you shed was recorded. Every act of faith you took when no one applauded you was noticed. And behind the scenes, your miracle was being held safely, not exposed to premature release. A pending miracle often comes with signs. Increased pressure. Unusual resistance. Moments when it feels like everything is testing your endurance at once. That is not a coincidence. Before a breakthrough surfaces, there is often a tightening, a refining. The enemy senses what is coming and attempts to discourage you before it manifests. But what he cannot see is the approval stamp already marked in your favor. He fights the future he fears, not the present you see. And the intensity you've been experiencing may be the clearest indicator that something powerful is near. God is also watching your response in this waiting season. Not to disqualify you, but to prepare you. Are you still speaking with faith? Are you still standing with expectation? Are you still choosing belief over bitterness? Alignment matters. Your words matter. Your attention matters. Because when heaven sees readiness, it accelerates release. When heaven sees agreement, it activates movement. And this is why your reaction right now is not small. It is significant. If this message is stirring something inside you, that is not emotional manipulation. That is resonance. Faith recognizes truth. And when your spirit agrees with what is being spoken, it creates spiritual alignment. So take a moment and physically respond. Like this video as a sign that you are in agreement with what God is declaring over your life. It may seem simple, but actions often seal intentions. When you engage, you are saying, I receive what heaven has approved. And if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, subscribe now and comment I receive below. Let your declaration be visible. Let your agreement be spoken. There is power in public faith. There is strength when you step forward instead of shrinking back. Some people will hesitate. Some will scroll. Some will treat this as ordinary. But you are still here. That alone says something about your discernment. The miracle has been held in reserve because your appointed time is close. Heaven does not reserve what it intends to revoke. It reserves what it intends to release at the precise moment of alignment. And that moment may be closer than you think. Do not underestimate what is happening in the unseen. The paperwork of heaven has already been completed. The signature of approval has already been written. What remains is your active participation. Your belief is not passive. It is partnership. And partnership with God unlocks what hesitation delays. You are not chasing a miracle. You are stepping into one that has been prepared in advance. This is the season where waiting turns into witnessing, where hope turns into evidence, where what was pending becomes present. And if you can feel the urgency building, if you sense that something is shifting even now, that is because the reservation period is ending. The release window is approaching. Stay aligned. Stay attentive. Stay expectant. Because what hath been held for you is not ordinary. It is appointed. There is a pattern that repeats throughout history, moments when God draws near, speaks clearly, and extends an invitation, yet many fail to recognize it. Not because they are evil, not because they are incapable, but because they are distracted. God says the danger is not always rebellion. Sometimes the real danger is indifference. Sometimes it is casual scrolling through what was meant to be treated as sacred. And tonight, this warning is not dramatic language. It is a divine alert. When heaven initiates contact, it often feels ordinary on the surface. A message, a voice, a prompting, a sudden pause in your routine. Yet hidden inside that ordinary container is a supernatural opportunity. The danger of scrolling past divine moments is that they rarely announce themselves twice in the same way. When God calls, He calls with intention. When He interrupts with purpose. And when He places urgency on a word, it is because timing matters more than comfort. Think about the times in your life when you felt a nudge to act, to respond, to move, and you hesitated. Not out of defiance, but out of delay. And later, you realized that moment never returned the same way again. Divine windows are real. They are openings in time where obedience meets opportunity. When those windows closed, it is not punishment. It is progression. God continues moving forward. The question is whether you move with Him. Distraction has become one of the most powerful spiritual weapons of this generation. Not loud opposition, not visible threats, just endless noise, endless scrolling, endless options. And within that constant movement, it becomes easy to treat everything as equal. But everything is not equal. Some moments carry weight. Some messages carry assignment. And some interruptions are heaven sent. If the enemy cannot stop your miracle through force, he will attempt to bury it beneath distraction. Because distraction delays discernment, and delayed discernment leads to mistiming. This is not about creating fear. It is about awakening awareness. When God says this message is not random, He is revealing intentionality. When He says your miracle is approved, He is revealing movement. But when He adds urgency, open this immediately before tonight, 11:59 p.m., He is revealing a window, a specific, time-sensitive alignment. And scrolling past could mean mislining yourself from what has already been set in motion. You may wonder, would God really allow a blessing to pass to someone else? Understand this. God's plans continue unfolding. If one person refuses alignment, another who is ready will step in. Not because God is trying to take from you, but because He works with response. Heaven responds to agreement. Heaven responds to faith. Heaven responds to attentiveness. If you ignore the invitation, the assignment does not disappear, it advances. And that is why this moment carries weight. There are people who once stood where you stand now. They felt the stirring. They sensed the call, but they treated it casually. And later, when they saw someone else walking in what looked like their answered prayer, they wondered what happened. What happened was timing. What happened was response. What happened was attention. Divine moments require recognition, and recognition requires focus. Right now, something inside you feels alert, maybe even unsettled. That is not coincidence. That is discernment awakening. Your spirit recognizes when God is speaking directly into your situation. You have prayed for clarity. You have asked for confirmation. And when confirmation arrives, it does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like this, an urgent reminder in the middle of your routine. Before this day ends, there is alignment required. Before 11:59 p.m., there is a decision being weighed. Not a complicated one, a simple one. Will you treat this as noise, or will you treat it as instruction? Will you scroll, or will you respond? Because what you do with small divine nudges determines how you handle greater releases. And here is the deeper revelation. This moment is also a test of spiritual sensitivity. Can you recognize when heaven interrupts your pattern? Can you sense when something carries more weight than usual? God does not shout over every distraction. He often whispers to those who are willing to pause. If you are still listening right now, that alone speaks volumes about your readiness. Do not underestimate how subtle destiny can be. It does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wrapped in urgency, asking for your immediate attention. And what you are about to understand next explains exactly why tonight, before the clock strikes 11:59 p.m., holds such significance for your life. You will be glad you remained attentive, because what comes next reveals why this timing cannot be ignored. Type "I am ready" in the comments if this resonates with you. Lesson code 144 is now activated. If this message has stirred your spirit, then hear this clearly. When you sow into fertile ground, you do not lose, you release harvest. This channel is not just content. It is a river carrying living water to thirsty souls across the world. Every super thanks, every membership, every seed sown through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code flashing on your screen becomes oil in the lamp, keeping this light burning for someone who is on the edge of giving up. God says in His Word that when you give, it shall be given back to you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. I believe I am called to sow into this mission because it is advancing heaven's agenda. Do not miss the blessing attached to obedience in this moment. As you give, may open heavens respond over your life, and may the same miracle approval resting over this message accelerate in your house. Step into this prophetic act now and release your seed. There are moments in time that look ordinary to the natural eye but carry weight in the spirit. God says 11:59 p.m. is not just a number on a clock tonight. It represents the edge of a cycle, the final breath of a day, the closing second before something shifts. Throughout Scripture, midnight has always symbolized transition. It is the hour when bondage breaks, when decisions manifest, when what was hidden begins to move. Midnight is not random. It is a spiritual threshold. Think about how a day ends. It does not end gradually over hours. It ends in a single, decisive second. One moment it is still today. The next moment, it is tomorrow. That is how spiritual transitions often happen. Quietly, suddenly, without visible warning. You may not hear a sound when the clock changes, but the date has shifted. And in the same way, there are divine deadlines that close without noise. 11:59 p.m. represents the last opportunity within a grace window. It is the final invitation before a page turns. God operates in seasons and timings. Here is a time to plant, a time to weigh, a time to harvest. And when a season reaches its appointed end, heaven moves forward. Tonight is not about fear, it is about alignment. When God places urgency on a moment, it is because something is reaching completion. The waiting period you have been in is not endless. The pending status over your miracle is not permanent. There is a crossing point where all this becomes now, and that crossing often happens at the edge of what feels like the final hour. Midnight in the spirit represents both endings and beginnings. It is where captivity turns into freedom, where delay turns into decision, where silence turns into movement. You may feel pressure building as the day moves closer to its end. That pressure is not meant to crush you. It is meant to position you. Just like the seconds before midnight count down with precision, heaven counts alignment carefully. Every response matters. Every act of faith matters. Every moment of attention matters. Why 11:59 p.m. specifically? Because it is the last measurable point before transition. It is the final opportunity within a defined window. After that second passes, a new cycle begins. And cycles determine what flows and what closes. If a door was meant to open in this cycle, but the response did not come, the opportunity may not carry over in the same form. Not because God is unwilling, but because seasons shift. And when seasons shift, assignments adjust. You may have noticed that breakthroughs often happen when you feel like you have reached your limit. When you say, "I cannot wait another day," that is often the edge of midnight in your life, the final moment before release. But here is the key. Many people give up at 11:58 p.m. They walk away 1 minute before transition. They assume nothing is happening because they cannot see movement. But heaven does not always announce the countdown. The shift can occur in a single unseen second. There is also something powerful about responding before the deadline instead of at it. When you move with urgency, you demonstrate readiness. When you respond without delay, you show agreement. God is not measuring your performance. He is observing your posture. Do you treat divine timing casually, or do you honor it? Do you assume there will always be another chance, or do you recognize when a window is specific? Tonight represents more than a clock change. It represents the closing of hesitation, the ending of indecision, the completion of a waiting phase. Before 11:59 p.m., you are standing in a space of choice. After it, momentum shifts. This is why distraction right now is not harmless. It is strategic. The enemy hopes you will treat this as optional. He hopes you will postpone alignment. Because if he can push your response past the threshold, he can delay your manifestation. But God says this is a moment of precision. You have been brought to this exact time for a reason. The prayers you prayed months ago are intersecting with tonight's timing. The tears you cried are meeting this deadline. The approval that was stamped in the unseen is approaching visible release. And heaven is watching your awareness. You may feel a seriousness as this hour approaches. That is not anxiety, it is anticipation. When something important is about to happen, the atmosphere shifts. You do not need fireworks to confirm it. You feel it in your spirit. A weight, a focus, a pull to pay attention. That is because time is not just passing, it is aligning. God is not confined to clocks, but he uses time to reveal order. And when he highlights a specific moment like 11:59 p.m., it is because there is significance attached to that boundary. This is the final minute of the current chapter, the final opportunity to respond within this cycle. And when the clock resets, what was pending will either be activated or redirected according to alignment. So treat this hour with reverence. Treat this deadline with seriousness. Not with panic, but with faith. Because when midnight strikes, something will shift. The only question is whether you positioned yourself before the clock turned. There is a spiritual principle that many people do not talk about because it feels uncomfortable, yet it is woven throughout divine order. It is the transfer principle. This is the reality that when someone refuses alignment, hesitates in obedience, or ignores divine instruction, what was prepared does not disappear, it moves. God's plans are not fragile. His purposes are not delayed by human indecision. If one vessel is not ready, another will be positioned. If one person remains distracted, another who is attentive will step forward. And tonight, this principle is not being revealed to frighten you, but to awaken you. When God approves a miracle, it carries intention. It carries assignment. It carries timing. But it also carried responsibility. Blessings are not random gifts dropped without purpose. They are strategic releases designed to advance destiny. If the one assigned does not respond, heaven does not cancel the blessing. It redirects it. This is not rejection. It is continuation. God's agenda continues moving forward whether we move with it or not. The transfer principle operates quietly. It does not always come with warning sirens. Sometimes it happens in subtle shifts. A door that was once open becomes difficult to access. An opportunity that felt near suddenly seems distant. A connection that was aligning fades unexpectedly. People often interpret these shifts as bad luck or coincidence. But sometimes, it is simply the result of delayed response. Divine timing passed, and the assignment moved to someone who was ready. This is why urgency matters. Not panic, not fear. Urgency. Urgency means you recognize weight when it appears. It means you understand that some invitations are time-sensitive. When God says, "Open this immediately before tonight," 11:59 p.m., He is revealing that there is movement in the unseen realm. The miracle has been approved, but approval must meet action. If action is absent, the flow adjusts. Think about how seasons work. If a farmer refuses to plant during planting season, the harvest does not wait indefinitely. The season continues and someone else who planted will reap. The field does not pause because one person hesitated. In the same way, spiritual opportunities operate within seasons. When the season closes, the harvest belongs to the one who participated. That is not harsh, it is order. There are moments in your life where you sense something slipping away. You may have thought, it just wasn't meant for me. But perhaps the deeper truth was that the window required a quicker yes, a faster response, a stronger agreement. God is merciful, and He provides many chances. But specific miracles tied to specific timelines require attentiveness. The transfer principle is not God taking from you. It is God continuing forward. Right now, your miracle is pending, not canceled. Approved, not withdrawn. But the instruction attached to it carries urgency. If you scroll past, if you dismiss, if you delay until after the window closes, alignment shifts. And when alignment shifts, the flow may attach to someone who is prepared to receive immediately. Heaven does not waste what it releases. This is why the enemy fights your focus. He understands the transfer principle. He knows that if he can keep you distracted until the window passes, he does not have to destroy your miracle. He only has to delay you long enough for reassignment to occur. Distraction becomes his strategy. Indifference becomes his tool. You whispers, you have time. You can respond later. But later is not always within the same cycle. God is not trying to pressure you into anxiety. He is inviting you into awareness. The blessing has your name attached, but names can be reassigned if the original recipient refuses to sign. This is a moment of conscious agreement. A moment to say, I will not let what is meant for me pass because I was careless. A moment to choose attentiveness over apathy. You may feel the weight of this truth settling on you. That weight is not condemnation. It is clarity. When you understand that divine movement continues regardless of personal hesitation, you begin to value timing differently. You begin to treat instructions seriously. You begin to respond promptly instead of eventually. The transfer principle also reveals something powerful. God's kingdom is abundant. There is no scarcity in heaven. If something shifts away from one person, it is not because resources ran out. It is because readiness determines placement, and readiness is demonstrated through response. Tonight, before 11:59 p.m., you are standing at the intersection of assignment and attention. The miracle has been stamped. The approval is secure. But participation determines possession. If you remain aligned, it remains attached. If you drift into distraction, the flow adjusts, not as punishment, but as progression. This is your moment to anchor yourself, to refuse delay, to reject distraction, to treat divine timing as sacred, because what has been prepared for you is not ordinary, and what is at stake is not small. Heaven is moving. The question is whether you will move with it, or watch it move without you. There are unmistakable signs that a miracle has been approved, even before it manifests in your physical reality. God rarely releases something suddenly without first allowing indicators to surface in the spirit. The problem is not that signs are absent. The problem is that many people misinterpret them. They assume resistance means rejection. They assume pressure means denial. But often, the exact opposite is true. Increased resistance can be the clearest evidence that approval has already been stamped. One of the first signs your miracle hath been approved is intensified opposition. You may have noticed that lately, challenges seem unusually persistent. Small inconveniences feel amplified. Unexpected conflicts arise. Delays appear where there were none before. This is not random chaos. When something significant is about to break through, opposition attempts to create discouragement. The enemy does not waste energy attacking what poses no threat. He reacts to movement he senses but cannot fully see. If spiritual approval hath been granted, Pressure often increases before manifestation occurs. Another sign is a strange mixture of exhaustion and expectation. You feel tired of waiting, yet something inside you refuses to give up. You cannot fully explain why hope remains alive despite setbacks. That internal tension is not weakness, it is transition. When approval has been granted, your spirit begins to sense nearness. Even if your circumstances remain unchanged, there is a subtle shift inside you, a feeling that something is close, a quiet anticipation that is difficult to ignore. You may also notice repeated confirmations. Certain themes appear again and again. Words of encouragement seem unusually aligned. Conversations unexpectedly echo your private prayers. It feels as though heaven is whispering the same message through different channels. This repetition is not coincidence. When a miracle is pending release, God often confirms it multiple times to strengthen your faith before it manifests. He prepares your heart so that when the door opens, you step through it confidently instead of hesitantly. Another powerful sign is increased spiritual sensitivity. You find yourself more aware of timing, more attentive to instruction, more alert to subtle nudges. It may even feel like your discernment has sharpened unexpectedly. That is because when approval is granted, alignment becomes critical. Heaven begins drawing your attention to details that matter. The closer you are to breakthrough, the more precise your obedience must become. Emotional heaviness can also be a surprising indicator. Just before release, many experience a final wave of doubt or discouragement. It feels like a last attempt to make you surrender prematurely. The enemy intensifies whispers of what if it doesn't happen, precisely because he knows it has already been approved. Doubt becomes louder when manifestation is near. But if you push through that final emotional resistance, you often find yourself stepping directly into fulfillment. There is also the sign of divine detachment. Certain relationships, habits, or environments may begin to feel uncomfortable. What once seemed normal now feels misaligned. This is not random discomfort. It is preparation. When a new level is approaching, old environments cannot sustain it. God begins shifting your surroundings to match what is coming. If your miracle carries expansion, your current space may start to feel too small. That restlessness is not dissatisfaction. It is divine adjustment. Another subtle yet powerful sign is a renewed urgency. You sense that timing matters more than before. Procrastination feels dangerous. Delay feels heavy. There is a growing awareness that this is not a casual season. That inner urgency aligns with the external instruction attached to this message. Before 11:59 p.m., something is completing, and your spirit recognizes that this deadline carries weight. You may even find that distractions increase in unusual ways. Notifications multiply. Random interruptions occur. You feel pulled in different directions. This is not coincidence. When approval has been stamped, distraction becomes strategic. The enemy attempts to scatter your focus so you miss the final alignment step. But the very presence of heightened distraction can confirm that something significant is at stake. Finally, there is peace beneath the pressure. Even when challenges rise, there is a quiet foundation inside you that remains steady. You cannot explain it fully, but you sense that you are not abandoned. That internal peace is the signature of approval. It is heaven's reassurance that the process is moving forward even if the evidence has not yet appeared. When you step back and examine these signs together, opposition, expectation, confirmation, sensitivity, urgency, distraction, and underlying peace, you begin to see a pattern. This is not random turbulence. It is pre-release activity. It is what happens when something approved in the unseen is preparing to become visible in the seen. So do not misinterpret your current tension. Do not assume resistance equals rejection. Instead, consider that you may be standing closer to manifestation than ever before. The signs are not warnings of cancellation. They are indicators of completion. The paperwork of heaven is finalized. The timing is narrowing. And the shift you have been waiting for may be approaching faster than you realize. There is always a final test before manifestation. Not because God is trying to trap you, but because He's preparing you to carry what He is releasing. Every major breakthrough in Scripture was preceded by a moment of testing. A moment where faith had to stand without visible evidence. A moment where obedience had to move before confirmation appeared. And right now, you may be standing in that exact space. The final test before your approved miracle becomes visible. The final test often feels unfair. It feels like pressure added at the worst possible time. You might think, why is this happening now, when I'm already tired? But that exhaustion is often the indicator that you are at the edge. Tests do not come at the beginning of the journey. They come at the end of preparation. They come when you are close enough to break through that the enemy grows desperate. The closer you are to manifestation, the more intense the test can feel. This test is not about perfection. It is about posture. God is not asking whether you have flawless faith. He is watching whether you maintain alignment under pressure. Do you shift into doubt when circumstances shake? Do you retreat when resistance rises? Or do you stand steady even when you cannot yet see the outcome? The final test measures consistency. It measures whether your belief remains firm even when your emotions fluctuate. One of the ways this test appears is through delay at the last minute. You may feel like everything was lining up, and then suddenly something slows down. A door that seemed ready to open pauses unexpectedly. Communication becomes quiet. Progress appears to stall. This is where many people lose confidence. They assume the pause means cancellation, but often it is simply a final refinement, a final alignment before full release. Another form of this test is distraction disguised as opportunity. Something else may appear attractive, something easier, something that tempts you to shift focus away from what you were waiting for. The enemy does not always attack directly. Sometimes he offers alternatives that look harmless but lead you away from your assigned breakthrough. The final test asks, will you stay anchored? Or will you chase something that feels immediate but lacks divine approval? Obedience in small actions becomes critical in this phase. A miracle may be large, but the instruction attached to it can seem simple. Respond. Agree. Pay attention. Do not scroll past. Do not treat this casually. The final test often hides inside what feels insignificant. It may not require dramatic sacrifice. It may simply require attentiveness. Yet that attentiveness is what seals the transition from pending to present. There is also an emotional component to this test. Doubt may whisper louder than usual. You might hear thoughts like, what if this is just another delay? Or what if I am expecting too much? These whispers intensify precisely because manifestation is near. Doubt becomes most aggressive at the edge of fulfillment. But remember, the approval has already been stamped. The decision in heaven has already been made. The test is not about changing God's mind. It is about strengthening your endurance. Heaven observes how you respond in the final stretch. Not to judge you harshly, but to ensure you are ready. A blessing released prematurely can overwhelm an unprepared heart. But a blessing released after endurance builds stability. The final test builds capacity. It stretches your trust so that when the miracle arrives, you can steward it without fear. You may also notice that your reactions are being refined. Situations that once would have triggered frustration now require patience. Conversations that could spark anger now demand restraint. This refinement is part of the test. Can you maintain peace under pressure? Can you choose faith over impulse? The miracle is not only about external change, it is also about internal maturity. Right now, before 11:59 p.m., you are in a narrow space of decision. The test is simple but significant. Will you remain attentive? Will you respond with urgency? Will you treat divine timing as sacred? This is not about grand gestures. It is about alignment in this precise moment. The final test is not meant to break you. It is meant to reveal that you are ready. It confirms that your waiting season was not wasted. It proves that your faith has grown roots deep enough to hold what is coming. When you pass this test, when you remain steady despite pressure, you position yourself for visible manifestation. So if things feel intense right now, do not interpret that intensity as failure. Interpret it as proximity. You are not being pushed away from your miracle. You are being pulled toward it. And what happens next depends on whether you stand firm in this final stretch. Now that you understand the weight of this moment, the question becomes clear. What should you do before 11:59 p.m.? When heaven places urgency on a time window, it is never without instruction. God does not reveal deadlines to create panic. He reveals them to prompt preparation. And preparation is what turns approval into manifestation. The first instruction is gratitude in advance. Not gratitude after you see it. Gratitude before it appears. There is something powerful about thanking God for what has already been approved, even if it has not yet materialized in your physical reality. Gratitude signals trust. It says, I believe your decision is final, even if my eyes have not caught up yet. When you give thanks ahead of time, you align yourself with heaven's verdict instead of your current circumstances. Before 11:59 p.m., take a moment to speak out loud, thank you, God, for the miracle that has already been approved. Let your words create agreement in the atmosphere. The second instruction is to remove doubt verbally. Doubt thrives in silence. When fears remain unchallenged, they grow. But when you speak faith intentionally, doubt weakens. Before the clock reaches its final minute, declare that delay does not mean denial. Declare that what God has approved cannot be canceled by distraction. Speak life over your situation. Your words matter more than you realize. They are not empty sounds. They are alignment tools. Heaven responds to agreement, and agreement often begins with spoken declaration. The third instruction is to eliminate distraction intentionally. The enemy's strategy in this hour is simple. Scatter your attention. Fill your mind with noise. Pull your focus in multiple directions. But before 11:59 p.m., choose stillness. Step away from unnecessary scrolling. Turn off what competes for your focus. Even a few intentional minutes of undivided attention can shift the atmosphere. This is not superstition. It is spiritual discipline. When you quiet the noise, you position yourself to recognize the movement of God more clearly. The fourth instruction is a visible act of faith. It does not have to be dramatic, but it must be intentional. Faith that remains internal is powerful, but faith expressed outwardly seals agreement. This could mean writing down what you are believing for. It could mean kneeling in prayer. It could mean lifting your hands in surrender. It could mean declaring publicly that you receive what has been approved. When you act, you demonstrate readiness, and readiness accelerates release. Another important step is forgiveness. If there is resentment lingering in your heart, release it before midnight. Unforgiveness creates internal blockage. It anchors you to past pain and limits forward movement. If your miracle involves expansion, peace must accompany it. Let go of what weighs you down. Say, I release every offense, every disappointment, every frustration. Do not carry yesterday's wounds into tomorrow's breakthrough. Alignment also includes expectation. Before 11:59 p.m., adjust your mindset from hoping to anticipating. Hope waits passively. Expectation stands alert. Expectation looks for movement. Expectation prepares for arrival. If you truly believe your miracle has been approved, begin thinking like someone who is about to receive. Prepare your heart. Prepare your mindset. Prepare your environment if necessary. When you expect, you position yourself to recognize fulfillment quickly. There is also power in silence. After you have spoken gratitude and declaration, take a moment of quiet reflection. Let your spirit settle. Listen. Sometimes the final instruction comes in stillness. Sometimes God speaks most clearly when the noise fades. Before the clock turns, allow space for divine clarity. And remember this: the action you take before 11:59 p.m. is not about earning your miracle. It is about aligning with what has already been granted. You are not persuading God to approve something. You are responding to an approval already given. The urgency is not about pressure. It is about partnership. As this hour approaches, you may feel anticipation rising. That feeling is not accidental. It is the awareness that something significant is closing and something new is beginning. The way you handle these final minutes matters. Treat them with reverence. Treat them with focus. Treat them as sacred space between what was pending and what is about to manifest. In a moment, I will reveal the final instruction that seals this transition completely. What comes next ties everything together and positions you for the release that has been waiting. You will be grateful you remained attentive for this final revelation. Type IT is sealed in the comments. Blessing code 321 is now activated. If this moment has stirred something deep inside you, then understand this. When oil is poured, lamps stay lit. When seeds are sown, harvests rise. This message is reaching hearts across the world because faithful people choose to fuel the fire. Every super thanks, every membership, every gift sown through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on your screen becomes living water to someone standing in spiritual drought. God declares that as you sow, you will reap in due season if you do not faint. I know I am stepping into obedience when I support what is spreading His word. Do not let this prophetic hour pass without attaching action to it. As you give, may open doors respond to you, and may the miracle approved over your life accelerate with divine favor. Release your seed now and watch heaven multiply it back to you. There is a spiritual law that many overlook, yet it carries tremendous power. Public agreement unlocks private miracles. What you declare openly establishes alignment internally. When faith remains hidden, it can survive. But when faith is expressed boldly, it activates movement. God designed agreement to multiply impact. When you speak your belief, when you align your words with heaven's approval, you create an atmosphere where manifestation can breathe. Think about the moments when you kept your hopes quiet because you feared disappointment. Silence can feel safe. If you never declare it, you never risk embarrassment. But miracles are not birthed in secrecy alone. They are strengthened through confession. When you publicly agree with what God has spoken, you draw a line in the Spirit. You say, I stand with this word. I align myself with this timing. I receive what has been approved. That alignment sends a signal, not only to heaven, but to every opposing force watching your response. Before 11:59 p.m., your agreement matters. The miracle is approved, but agreement activates participation. This is why words are powerful. They shape direction. They establish authority. They confirm readiness. If you whisper doubt privately while hoping publicly, you create internal conflict. But when your public declaration matches your private belief, unity forms. And unity releases acceleration. There is also strength in collective agreement. When multiple voices declare faith simultaneously, something shifts in the atmosphere. Isolation weakens expectation, but unity strengthens it. You are not alone in this moment. Others are listening. Others are responding. Others are choosing alignment before the deadline passes. When you comment your agreement, you are not performing, you are partnering. You are adding your voice to a chorus of expectation that pushes back against delay. Some will hesitate. Pride may whisper, "You don't need to say anything." Fear may whisper, "What if nothing happens?" But the final stretch before breakthrough always challenges boldness. This is where many people shrink back. Yet shrinking back at the edge of manifestation can delay what was already set in motion. Courage at this moment is not dramatic, it is decisive. It is choosing to stand openly in what you believe. Public agreement also trains your spirit to move quickly. It builds a habit of responsiveness. When God speaks and you respond immediately, you cultivate readiness for greater assignments. Small acts of obedience prepare you for larger releases. Commenting, declaring, sharing. These may seem simple, but simplicity does not mean insignificance. In the kingdom, obedience is measured by responsiveness, not complexity. And here is something deeper. When you publicly align with a word, you close the door to internal retreat. Once you declare, you commit. Once you say, "I receive," you anchor yourself to expectation. That anchor becomes critical in the moments after midnight, because doubt may attempt to revisit. Circumstances may not shift instantly, but your declaration becomes a reminder that you chose alignment when it mattered. Right now, before this day closes, make your agreement visible. Like this video as a sign that you are standing in faith. Do not treat that action casually. See it as a mark of agreement. If you have not yet subscribed, subscribe now and step into this community of expectation. And share this message with someone who needs urgency in their spirit tonight. Let them feel the weight of this moment before it passes. Hype this video in the comments. Declare boldly, "My miracle is approved." Let your voice carry authority. Because here is the truth, hesitation weakens momentum. Agreement strengthens it. The enemy prefers silent believers. He prefers private hope with no public conviction. But heaven responds to bold faith. When you align publicly, you create a ripple effect. Your courage may be the confirmation someone else needed. Your declaration may awaken someone else's faith. And do not underestimate how this ties to timing. Before 11:59 p.m., you are sealing something through agreement. When the clock shifts, your declaration remains as evidence of your readiness. Agreement positions you to recognize fulfillment quickly. It sharpens your awareness. It reminds you that you participated instead of hesitated. There is also a principle of sowing in agreement. When you sow your words into fertile spiritual ground, you reap alignment. When you sow doubt, you reap confusion. But when you sow faith publicly, you reap clarity. Tonight is not about performance. It is about positioning. Your voice matters. Your response matters. Your agreement matters. As the final minutes approach, treat your declaration as sacred. Do not scroll silently past this moment. Do not remain hidden in hesitation. Step forward boldly. Speak what you believe. Align your words with heaven's approval. Because what you declare before midnight becomes the foundation you stand on after midnight. The next revelation will expose why distraction intensifies at this precise hour and why your focus right now is under unusual pressure. What you are about to understand will clarify the battle over your attention in these final moments. If you have felt unusually distracted today, that is not random. If your focus has been pulled in multiple directions, if notifications seem louder, if random thoughts keep interrupting your concentration, understand this clearly. The enemy wants you distracted right now. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right now, before 11:59 p.m. Because distraction in this hour is strategic. The enemy understands timing even when he cannot control destiny. He cannot cancel what God has approved, but he can attempt to disconnect you from alignment. And distraction is his most subtle weapon. He does not need to create chaos. He only needs to dilute your attention. If he can keep you half focused, half committed, half responsive, he can weaken the momentum that leads to manifestation. Distraction rarely feels dangerous. It feels harmless. A wicked scroll. A small delay. A thought that says, "I'll come back to this later." But later is not always within the same window. Later may fall after the threshold passes. And that is why this hour carries unusual pressure. The enemy's goal is simple: separate you from the weight of this moment long enough for the deadline to expire. You may notice internal distraction as well. Sudden doubts surfacing. Questions rising that were quiet before. Thoughts that attempt to minimize the urgency of this message. It's not that serious. You have time. Nothing will change. These whispers are not casual. They are targeted. Because if he can convince you this is ordinary, he can convince you to treat it casually. The enemy fights hardest at the edge of breakthrough. Not at the beginning. Not in the middle. At the edge. When you were far from manifestation, the pressure may have been lighter. But as the deadline approaches, intensity increases. Why? Because he senses shift. He senses alignment. He senses that something approved in the unseen is nearing visible release. And desperation fuels distraction. There is also external distraction. Conversations that drain your energy. Tasks that suddenly demand urgency. Minor issues that feel exaggerated. You might find yourself pulled into situations that normally would not disturb your focus. This is not coincidence. It is an attempt to scatter your attention so you miss the precision of this hour. Focus is a spiritual discipline. And in moments like this, it becomes a weapon. When you choose to remain attentive despite distraction, you demonstrate authority. You show that your alignment cannot be easily broken. The enemy cannot force you to scroll. He can only suggest it. He cannot control your response. He can only tempt your delay. And every second you remain engaged is a declaration of resistance. Understand something important. Distraction does not always remove you physically. It can remove you mentally. You can still be here, still listening but mentally drifting. That is why you must be intentional. Bring your attention back. Refuse to let your mind wander into doubt. Refuse to let trivial concerns overshadow divine timing. Guard your focus like something valuable, because it is. This hour before 11:59 p.m. is not about frantic effort. It is about steady awareness. The enemy wants you emotionally overwhelmed or mentally scattered. But calm focus disrupts his strategy. When you remain grounded, When you stay attentive, you deny him the opportunity to interfere with alignment. You may also feel a subtle urge to disengage because intensity feels uncomfortable. Urgency can feel heavy, but that heaviness is not harm. It is significance. Important moments carry weight. Major transitions feel different. And rather than escape that feeling, lean into it. Let it sharpen your attention instead of dulling it. The enemy hopes that by the time midnight arrives, you will have forgotten the seriousness of this moment. He hopes that distraction will blur the memory of approval. He hopes that delay will replace decisiveness. But awareness breaks his strategy. When you recognize distraction for what it is, it loses power. Right now, choose clarity. Choose attentiveness. Choose to remain present. The miracle has been approved. The window is narrowing, and distraction is the final barrier attempting to separate you from manifestation. The next part will reveal why this message found you specifically and why this confirmation is not generic but deeply personal. What you are about to hear will connect every piece of this timing directly to your life. At this point, you might be asking yourself a quiet question: is this really for me? And that question matters, because confirmation is not about general encouragement. It is about personal alignment. God does not send urgent words without intention. He does not interrupt your routine without purpose. And if you are still here, still listening, still feeling the weight of this message, then this is not random. This is your confirmation. Confirmation does not always arrive wrapped in dramatic signs. Sometimes it arrives through repetition, through a persistent stirring that refuses to fade, through a message that feels as though it was written with your exact situation in mind. You have been praying for clarity. You have been asking for a sign that what you sensed in your spirit was real. And now, before 11:59 p.m., clarity is being placed directly in front of you. Think about the timing. Out of all the moments in your day, you encountered this message before the deadline attached to it. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. You could have scrolled past earlier. You could have dismissed the title. But something made you stop. Something made you pay attention. That pause was not accidental. It was orchestrated. Confirmation often comes right before decision. It strengthens you so that when the moment of choice arrives, you respond with confidence instead of hesitation. You are standing in that space now. The miracle has been approved. The window has been revealed. The urgency has been explained. And now, confirmation settles the question. Yes, this is about you. You may have noticed how certain parts of this message seem to echo your private thoughts. The waiting season, the unusual resistance, the distraction, the internal urgency. Those details are not vague. They are specific. And specificity is a mark of confirmation. God speaks in ways that resonate personally. When something aligns with your hidden struggles and silent prayers, it is not accidental, it is intentional. There is also something deeper happening. Confirmation dismantles doubt. Doubt thrives in uncertainty. It feeds on maybe and what if. But confirmation replaces uncertainty with clarity. It says this is the moment. This is the alignment. This is the time. You may still feel nervous. You may still feel the weight of responsibility. But underneath that, there is recognition. A sense that this is not just another message. It is a marker in your timeline. Every breakthrough story has a moment of confirmation before manifestation. A moment where the individual realizes, this is it. This is the turning point. You are at that turning point now. Not because circumstances have changed yet, but because awareness has shifted. You now understand the weight of this hour. You now see the seriousness of 11:59 p.m. You now recognize that distraction is not harmless in this season. Confirmation also brings accountability. Once you recognize a moment as divine, you can no longer treat it casually. Awareness carries responsibility. Now that you know the miracle is approved, your response becomes intentional rather than accidental. Now that you understand the transfer principle, your attentiveness becomes deliberate. Confirmation removes the excuse of ignorance. You may feel a mixture of anticipation and pressure that is natural when standing at the edge of change. But do not interpret that feeling as fear. Interpret it as importance. Important moments feel different. They carry gravity. They require focus. And they demand decision. Before midnight arrives, you have clarity. You have instruction. You have urgency. And now you have confirmation. Everything has been placed in order. Nothing about this timing is chaotic. Nothing about this message is random. The alignment is precise. When the clock shifts, you will remember this moment. You will remember that you were warned. You were invited. You were instructed. And you were confirmed. What happens next flows from what you do with this awareness. This is your confirmation that heaven has moved. Your confirmation that approval has been stamped. Your confirmation that timing matters tonight. And your confirmation that you were meant to hear this before the window closes. The final part will seal this message completely, with a declaration over your life that releases peace, assurance, and expectation as this cycle ends. What you are about to receive next is not a warning, it is a blessing. You have reached the final moment of this message, and that alone says something powerful about you. You did not scroll away. You did not treat this casually. You stayed. You listened. You aligned. And now, as this cycle approaches its closing second, this is not a warning anymore. This is a declaration. God says your miracle has been approved, and now it is being released. Not because you were perfect, not because you earned it, but because heaven decided in your favor. The waiting season you endured was not punishment. It was preparation. The resistance you faced was not rejection. It was confirmation. The urgency you felt tonight was not fear. It was alignment calling your name. As this day closes, something shifts in the unseen. What was pending moves into motion. What was delayed begins to accelerate. What felt distant begins to draw near. Here is a release happening that does not require noise to be real. Some miracles manifest instantly. Others begin unfolding quietly, step by step. But once release is initiated, it cannot be reversed. Tonight is not about superstition. It is about spiritual precision. You were brought to this message before 11:59 p.m. for a reason. You were given understanding before the clock changed. You were warned about distraction. You were taught about alignment. You were shown the transfer principle. And now, you stand positioned. Receive this final declaration over your life. Every blessing that was approved in the Spirit is finding its pathway into your reality. Every delay that tested your endurance has strengthened your capacity. Every tear you shed has watered the soil of your breakthrough. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was overlooked. Nothing was forgotten. As the clock shifts, peace will guard your heart. Anxiety will not follow you into the new cycle. Doubt will not dominate your thoughts. You will step forward with quiet confidence, knowing that heaven has already spoken yes. If there was fear that you might miss it, release that fear now. You stayed. You responded. You aligned. The window did not close on you. You closed it in agreement. And because you treated this moment seriously, you will not walk away empty-handed. Your miracle may not look exactly the way you imagined. Sometimes God answers beyond expectation. Sometimes He answers differently than requested. But when He releases with wisdom. Trust that what is unfolding is tailored to your growth, your calling, and your future. There is also protection attached to this release. What God gives, He guards. What He opens, He sustains. What He initiates, He completes. You will not have to fight to maintain what He establishes. You will not have to manipulate outcomes. You will not have to force what He has ordained. And even if manifestation unfolds progressively, do not mistake gradual for absent. Seeds sprout beneath the surface before they break through the soil. Just because you cannot see immediate evidence does not mean movement has not begun. Trust the shift. Trust the timing. Trust the approval that has already been stamped in your favor. Tonight marks the end of hesitation, the end of second-guessing, the end of treating divine moments as ordinary. You have stepped into awareness. You have chosen attentiveness. And because of that, you move into the next cycle differently than you entered this one. Lift your heart right now and receive this blessing. May favor surround you like a shield. May clarity guide every decision you make. May doors that were locked swing open with ease. May relationships align with purpose. May provision meet you without struggle. May peace settle in your spirit as confirmation that it is done. This is not the end of your story. It is the turning of a page. And as this page turns, you step into a chapter marked by movement instead of stagnation, clarity instead of confusion, release instead of delay. Type "My miracle is here" in the comments. Blessing code 911 is now activated. As this cycle closes and your miracle is declared released, remember this. When God opens the heavens, He looks for willing vessels to pour through. This channel is one of those vessels, carrying light to souls standing in their own 11:59 p.m. moments. Every super thanks, every membership, every seed sown through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on your screen becomes part of someone else's breakthrough story. God says when you give, it returns to you multiplied, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. I am stepping forward as a willing vessel to fuel this mission and keep this fire burning. Do not let this sacred momentum end without attaching action to it. As you sow into this ground, may the release over your life expand beyond what you imagined, and may open heavens answer you swiftly. Act now and seal this moment with obedience. Your miracle is not random. It is released.